It was strangely quiet in the streets. It was the blackest hour, the one before the dawn, but also the brightest, for even in the darkness, day is stirring. The light winding its way around the world, waiting to break into it. And other sounds accompany them. Somewhere a rooster screams at the impending day. Everywhere birds are beginning to cackle and chirp, marking out their territory. They can even smell the morning. The tang of thyme and wild garlic hang in the air beside the paths they are walking and hurrying down. There are a few guards around, but they don't bother them. They'd feared trouble over Passover, but women on their way somewhere, walking with a sense of purpose, that doesn't disturb them. These women don't look like insurrectionists. They simply look like they're late for an appointment. They have the air of someone in a hurry. But deep within, it is very different. They are propelled by resignation. They have a date with duty, and all it recalls is all that is lost. The signs of the approaching day are just a ghastly reminder that everything is the same as it was yesterday. The whole world clinging ever closer to its demise. Their pace slows a little. They are now outside of the city, nearly at the garden, nearly at the place where he was laid. They're walking where he'd walked on that day of unimaginable horror, climbing that steep path towards Golgotha, the place of the skull. The tomb was being watched. They knew that. They had followed the body as Sabbath fell, wanting to see him safe in his stone-cold tomb, his final resting place. And they were told that there would be guards there, fearful that someone might steal the body, afraid they'd storm his grave like a fortified city and take him home themselves. All sorts of questions filled their minds. Will the soldiers let them through? Will they help them move the stone so they could go in? They catch their breath as they reach the summit. The garden is to their left, a peaceful place stretching to the west of the city, a beautiful place full of flowers and colour. Here they are. Here is the place. Here he is. They pause at the entrance, their hearts beating quickly, almost there. Just one last thing to do. Almost over. And they rush into the garden, suddenly sensing the awfulness of it all. Yet unaware, unknowing. And in a moment, they behold it. The guards are gone, nowhere to be seen. The stone isn't in place, it's been rolled away. There's a fire still smouldering and one man has left his cloak. It's as if he'd run away at speed and carelessly. The tomb now abandoned. Mary leads as she steps down into the tomb, staring in horror. It is hideously apparent what has happened. His body has been seized by some overconfident band of stupid zealots. It is also deeply frightening. There will be more controversy, more scandal. The temperature would rise again. Will it ever be over? They look to the left and to the right, searching for any traces of where he might be or who might be close. But they are alone. A cold fear, even more dreadful than the fears of the night, grips their hearts. Even the opportunity for one last kindness has been stolen from them. And in that second, an overwhelming despair rises within them. There really is no meaning left. They stand in front of the tomb. Standing still, but deep unrest convulses their spirit. Tears smudge their faces. And then there is a crash. The jug of oil and spices falls to the ground, oil running out and the fragrance filling the chamber. It's difficult to say what they then saw. There was something there, certainly, someone. It scared the life out of them, so bright they couldn't even look in the direction. Why do you look for the living among the dead? It was as if those words had been spoken to them, and yet it was as if they couldn't hear them. They think there can't be a mistake. They saw Jesus die. But there was nothing more that they wanted in this world and the world beyond than for there to have been a mistake, a nightmare, a reversible horror. But it couldn't have been. They saw the blood, they had seen his heavy, lifeless body. His spirit wasn't in his frame. It was as dead as stone. And yet, why do you look for the living among the dead? They stand at the mouth of the tomb, that place of death, the stone rolled to one side, the clothes, his grave clothes, the long white body covering, the strip that had held it in place, and the headcloth. It all lay so neatly as if placed on his bed. Surely if someone had stolen his body, they would have taken the cloth. Who would want to carry a dead, naked body through the city? And even if they did, who would take the time to fold the cloth and lay it so neatly? Whose hand had done this? Who had done this? They think back over the years they had known him. They think of the child offering his small supply of bread and fish, transformed into food for a multitude of hungry people, a crowd of longing. They think of a man who'd lost his little girl, brought back from death to life. They think of what they'd heard from Peter of a calm storm and stilled waves. They think of other miracles, of lives restored in other ways, of bent bones straightened, a man lifted from his bed to walk home, of blind eyes seeing, a man weeping from the wonder of the first time of seeing the world in all its beauty. They think of the lost and the shamed and the shunned, found and loved and looked at with the eyes of love which didn't look away, which didn't cast the first stone to condemn a life of sin. And they think of Lazarus and the look on his face. If an angel speaks, why would he lie? If an angel is, then there are things we simply don't know and can't see, but sometimes glimpse. If an angel is a glimpse, then there is something more. If there is something more, then nothing is impossible. Could this be possibly true? It's only been minutes since they were walking up the narrow streets, since they'd passed the soldiers, since they'd reached the garden gate, and now everything is changed. Can the impossible be possible? Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. Those words came back like a crashing flood. All those times he had said that the Son of Man must die, that the Son of Man will be handed over, that the Son of Man will rise again. The Son of Man will rise again on the third day. Friday day 1. Saturday, day 2. Sunday, could it be? They look at one another with revelation in their eyes. What should be done? Who should be told? Would anyone believe this? Voices of hope flutter between them, a light in the way some small flames are. A breath could snuff them out. And yet, they knew what they'd seen. They had seen an angel and heard his voice of fire. The city is beginning to shine. The light spills from the horizon. More birds are beginning to sing. The sun has risen. He has risen. And so they run. They run with joy as fast as their legs could carry them, straight back to where their friends were hiding. He's alive, alive, I tell you, just as he said. What do you mean, alive? Their questions come like arrows towards them. He was dead, no question about it. What were they playing at, claiming he was alive? They didn't expect any of the others to swallow it, surely. You're making it up. Of course you'd like to believe it. But it's nonsense. Anyone could see it. And anyway, women are not trustworthy witnesses. But Peter was gone, still feeling sick to his stomach with forbidding guilt. Why had he allowed his own self-preservation to rule that night? He'd hardly slept a wink since that cruel, lurid day, and yet he ran. Like an Olympic sprinter towards the finishing line, he weaved through the city streets, towards the gate, towards the garden. He knew these women well enough to give their story some credence. And he remembered something Jesus had said, something that had led him to hope that the story he'd just heard was more than nonsense. Entering the garden, the smell of orange blossom fills the air, fills his nostrils, his heart beating, caught in the moment of highest excitement and yet vain throbbing terror. He bends down, scrambling on his hands and knees, blinking as his eyes adjust to the light. And there they are, the empty grave clothes in an empty tomb. He isn't dead. He is alive. It was just as they'd said. Why was there any doubt? He was back, just as they'd given up all hope. It wasn't defeat, it was victory. He was alive and everything was going to be okay.